Alright YouTube, Firestorm here, also known as Sam. Well, firstly I just want to say a big thank you to my good friend Lawrence for letting me guest appear on his new channel regarding Disney products. Thanks very much, Lawrence. So what am I talking about today? Well, I'd love to say that I'm talking about 1994 The Lion King, the most awesome film ever made by Disney. This is Disney's greatest film. I love this film. It is awesome. But unfortunately I'm not talking about the 1994 Disney Lion King film. Today I will be talking about the 2019 Lion King remake, which I saw yesterday. So get ready people, because this is going to be a very long rant slash review. So I'm going to start off by saying it's not a bad film. It isn't a bad film at all. It's a modern concept that follows the story of the Lion King very well. And that's where we'll stop with that. So, to be perfectly blunt, utterly blunt here, I really didn't like the film. It's perhaps the first time in history of me seeing films at cinema that I've generally wanted to walk out, because I was generally bored. Now, the issue with the Lion King 2019 remake is, simply put, it's emotionless and soulless, and it just has no depth. The original is colourful, full of emotion and story and characters and heart and soul, and this new version has none of that. It may well have the music, it may well look visually stunning, but it doesn't have heart. So let's begin, with the most obvious part, A Circle of Life. Now obviously the original Lion King has that amazing intro, The Circle of Life. You get the massive sun coming up, you get the Circle of Life song coming in, and it's all vibrant and alive and beautiful. The new version has a Circle of Life, obviously, and yeah, it's more or less a frame by frame redo of the original, but with all, lifelike CGI animals. And that's sort of the problem. It just looks like a load of animals in a nature documentary with the Circle of Life playing, and there's no heart to it, there's no love to it. It just feels like an empty song with nothing to enjoy. And the film follows the same plot, but as I said, there's no emotion. So obviously the Circle of Life is just that. It's an emotionless piece in this new version, because there's no heart to it. The animation isn't there, the colours aren't there, the emotion isn't there. And when it comes to emotionless stuff, the film's full of it. I mean, when you look at I Can't Wait to Be King, The Lion King, no doubt the Lion King's most colourful, dazzling song, the song which really is upbeat and powerful and tells the story of young Simba and his imagination and how he foresees himself as the future king of the pride. The new version of it has none of that. It's not colourful, it's not enjoyable. Again, it just feels like you're watching two realistic lion cubs running around the place while I Can't Wait to Be King is just playing in the background. You don't feel like you're part of it. You just feel like you're just watching it. And speaking of emotionless, speaking of a lack of emotion, this is one of the big problems. The characters don't have emotion. They may look, amazing. They may look like real lions and, like real animals. And they effectively are, because they're using some of the most latest digital CGI photographic rendering technology. But that doesn't give a film heart. If you can't show your characters, especially when they're animals, to have emotion, the film has no heart. And in the most important scene of The Lion King, and we all know what it is, the death of Mufasa, that moment in the film that defines Simba as a character, the emotional roller coaster he feels, The point in the original film where he is, he's like nudging Mufasa, he's like, come on Dad, we've got to get up, we've got to go home. And eventually, slowly, it dawns on him that his dad is dead. It dawns on him that Mufasa, his father, has died. And you get Simba like kind of snuggling up next to Mufasa's body and is crying, and there's a real raw, strong, emotional connection to that scene. In the new one, there's none of that. In the 2019 remake, there's none of that. The scene is bland. It's just sort of like Mufasa's dead. That's it. Like, there's no emotion in the scene. Like, Simba is just emotionless. It's sort of like, he's still asking for help, and it's still trying to convey sadness, but there's no sadness in the character. There's no displayed emotion. And that scene feels pointless in the new one because it doesn't express the same level of emotion as it did in the original. Now, another thing worth mentioning as well is Be Prepared, Scar's song. That Be Prepared is probably, in my opinion anyway, Disney's best villain song. And, in the original, it's dark, it's gritty, it's got an atmosphere. Yes, the hyenas are practically Nazis, but in the new one, Be Prepared is it feels like it's less than 60 seconds, and again, no emotion, no meaning. It's just sort of there, and that's sort of the problem. And then if we move on, we're just covering the songs here for the moment, but if we move on to Hakuna Matata, again, in this new version, it sort of feels out of place. There's no emotion. Again, I keep going back to emotion because there isn't any. Hakuna Matata in the new one, again, it just feels like it's there. There's no vibrance, no emotion. It doesn't really seem to have the upbeat feel that the new one, that the original had. Because the original Hakuna Matata it sort of comes into it, like Pumbaa and Timon find Simba in the desert. At that point, is at his lowest point. His dad's died. He believes he was responsible. He's basically in self-exile. Hakuna Matata comes into it, and it's sort of upbeat, and it's sort of there to pick up the pace, make the audience feel better, make Simba feel better. And in the new version of this film, it doesn't do that. It's just there. And then we have to move on to Can You Feel the Love Tonight, which is a song very much expressing emotion, an emotion of love and friendship. Because, when this song comes into play in the original, it's Simba and Nala's reuniting. For years Nala thought Simba was dead. It turns out he isn't dead. The song itself and the whole aspects of that song in the original is showing these two childhood friends coming back together again. And it's sort of showing emotion through the song and through the animation and through the scenes. And it's beautiful. And in a lot of ways, it is shown to express love. That it's love between these two characters that grows and develops, and it really shows that's what they had. In the new one, again, it's bland. Because, as some people have said, you may as well call the new one Can You Feel the Love This Afternoon? Because it's all in the daytime and there's no emotion, there's no colour. It's just like Simba and Nala, and it's just sort of like, here we are. And that's the issue with this film, it's emotion. It has no emotion, it has no soul. And like, to discuss other elements of the film, like, you have at the end of The Lion King, you have that epic battle where you have basically Simba and the Pride fighting Scar and the hyenas. In the original, it's full of awesome effects and just quite incredible fighting scenes. You've got the I've completely forgotten the name of the monkey character, Rafiki, damn it, I've got that, Rafiki. Well, you got Rafiki basically kicking ass. You got Rafiki being all ninja on the hyenas. In this new one, there's none of that. You know, it sort of teases it, but it never goes there. And that's sort of the point. Again, it just lacks those little elements. And now, just to move on here, and just to basically talk about some of the newer stuff that's added into it. It's not really a spoiler, this, but then again, if you probably know the plot of The Lion King anyway. But one of the things about it is what they do with the hyenas is the hyenas feel like they were supposed to be much more indebted into the plot, have a much more solid basis. Because when the hyenas have come into it, when Simba and Nala come across the elephant graveyard, Shenzi, the female hyena, I mean, in the original she is the leader of the pack of the 3 hyenas. But in the new one, there's more of them. Obviously, there's more of them in the original, but you don't see them until near the end. But in this one, you see kind of like all of them. And it's heavily implied in this particular scene when Mufasa shows up and saves Simba and Nala that there's a bit of a history between Shenzi and Mufasa. And it's sort, you know, because there's a bit where Mufasa's sort of like, you know the law, Shenzi, you and your pack, you have stripped your lands bare of everything, but I forbade you from coming into the Pride lands. And it feels like there's supposed to be a history there, and they're hinting on it, but it never leads to fruition. And then, if you go back to the original, when you've got Nala and Simba running through the elephant graveyard, trying to outrun the hyenas, trying to stay alive, that scene it's full of it. It's dark. Again, it's dark, it's gritty, it's full of like negative colours, and it's full of, you know, you really really worry about these 2 characters that they're running for their lives. In the new one in 2019, in this Lion King, that particular scene is again really short. It's like a minute at best, and then there's no real tension to it. Then Mufasa shows up, saves them all, and that's it. And although they do try and capture certain elements perfectly, and they do, as I keep saying, it's the lack of emotion. And then, just to sort of move on here, again, there's a lot of foreshadowing in certain parts of the film. I mean, one of the parts is like at the end where you're having the big battle with Scar and Simba, and there's a moment where Shenzi and Nala are facing off, and it's sort of implied that they've got a history together, because Shenzi sort of says to Nala, you know, oh, I've been waiting a long time for this, and it's like, okay, is it implying that Shenzi and Nala have some sort of history? Something happened between them? Did they fight a lot? You know, when Simba was gone and Nala was growing up, did she have to learn to survive and fight these hyenas? It's never really said, but it's hinting at something. All in all, it was the lack of it. I mean, again, we look into one of the other really strong emotional scenes is when Simba has that whole ghost dad moment where, you know, he effectively speaks to his dad while he's in that form in the clouds, and it's very powerful. It has a very almost godlike feel to it, if you will. Like Mufasa's done in a way that makes him like a leviathan in the sky, and he's like glowing and everything, and he's like, Simba, you have forgotten me. And it's like, you know, no, never, never, and it's like, no, by forgetting yourself you have forgotten me. But in the new one, in the 2019 version, it's not the same, because for a start, Mufasa doesn't even appear. You hear his voice, and the way they do the clouds, it's like the lightning flashes, it almost like, it kind of like illuminates these clouds and makes it look like Mufasa's face for a few seconds. But it isn't, again, it lacks the depth of the original. It's the depth that it lacks. And while I was watching this film yesterday, I felt bored. I've never felt so bored that I've wanted to walk out of a film before, but I genuinely wanted to walk out of this film. And while I was watching it, in my head was the original animated classic playing over the new one. And I just felt like this is it. I don't understand this. Disney, you've taken one of your most beloved, beautiful animated classics and you've turned it into a boring, emotionless film. It may look beautiful, but it doesn't have the heart and soul of the original. It just lacks that. It lacks that that the needed bit, the needed emotion. You don't have any characters portraying emotion. They're very static and very boring, and the music's there, but it doesn't do anything because it doesn't feel like it belongs. And that's it. That's my issue with it, people. That's my issue with the 2019 Lion King. In a nutshell, after watching this video, it's emotionless, soulless. Just, it doesn't have what the original has. And, you know, I'm sort of thinking to myself now, how far are we going to go with these remakes? Just what is Disney's overall plan? Who can say? But anyway, that's it. That's me done, I think. That's my thoughts on Lion King 2019. Thank you for watching. Peace out, people.